So Michigan and USC last year were ultimate disappointments, not just by their standard, but by preseason standards. USC was a preseason top 25 team. Michigan was preseason top 10, and they finished they finished at least a full standard deviation below where a lot of people expected them to finish. I got USC right. I said that's a 500 team, or maybe even a 5-7 team in the preseason with their move to the Big Ten, the travel, the fact that it was only year one of the elite defensive staff and they lost so much on offense. I was very wrong on Michigan preseason, although I adjusted pretty quickly to the fact that, they weren't better than 8-4, or maybe 9-3 with everything going right for them. And not everything went right for them. Same thing with USC. Lincoln Riley, not to go off on a tangent here too much, but historically, including the 2024 season, he's won around 70% of his close games. And yet USC lost to Michigan, Minnesota, Maryland, Washington, all in close games. They lost to Penn State too, 5th close game. And the Notre Dame game was technically not a one-score loss, but they were driving, ready to tie it up, and then pick 6. So I would count that as a close game too. Not 7. Put that down. But they almost lost some additional games. Like, could have lost to LSU, could have lost to Texas A&M. They had 2 close wins and then 6 close losses. It's crazy. And then not even just 2 close wins. They also beat UCLA by only 6 points. Even with that many close games being played, Riley, given his history, given the talent that USC has and the staff that they had, and the O-line and Woody Marks, who I thought was just a dog at running back, just an awesome, give it your all, X-Factor caliber player, they should have went better than 6-6, and Michigan should have went better than 7-5. I mean, if Michigan just got Kyle McCord out of the portal and maybe another tackle to just better protect him than how Michigan's tackles protected their quarterbacks, Michigan could have, maybe flirted with the college football playoff at points last season instead of being out of it well before November. For USC, if Riley ran the ball more last year and maybe USC goes with Maava to open the year, or maybe their portal additions on defense pan out better, just, little things that could have been done differently or in a different universe, well, something just clicks that didn't click. Wasn't the staff's fault or players' fault, but you know how things are, stuff that's outside of the team's control. Well, they probably flirt with the college football playoff and are out of it before the month of November. And their preseason win totals suggest, Michigan's at 8.5 and USC's at 7.5, that while these teams should be better than last year, they may not quite be there yet in terms of reaching the expectations of what their blue blood histories provide, of the standard at USC and the standard at Michigan, in Ann Arbor, and in Los Angeles. So this question was asked by someone who's actually helped me a little bit out with streaming, given me some quality advice. Jester's Jinx, who's made appearances on Darren Talks Ball, as well as someone making videos, used to play college football. He asks a question. He's a Michigan fan for context. Who has the better bounce back year, USC or Michigan? So I can go about this a multitude of ways. If you're talking about power ratings, if that's what you're discussing, the odds say that it's going to be Michigan. I think if you're talking about bouncing back relative to how many wins gained compared to last year, I think you're talking about USC, because they lost an additional game in the regular season, and USC and Michigan play each other, and USC hosts Michigan. And teams on the East Coast or West Coast typically don't have a good time traveling out to the other coast and winning. So following that logic, USC kind of has a +2 gain on Michigan in a sense. Like, they lost an additional game last year, and then they'll probably be favored in this year's game. It'll be much easier for USC to win more games relative to last year's record than for Michigan to do the same thing, if that makes sense. Like, the margin of wins gained for USC has a much larger chance of being higher, I think, than the margin of wins gained for Michigan, just because USC's schedule in terms of travel, in terms of competition, I think it's a little bit easier. On top of that, they host Michigan, and they have more to gain than Michigan does because Michigan had a winning record last year and USC was at 500. If you're talking about straight up who is going to have the better record, then that would likely be Michigan by win total. So there's a variety of ways you can attack this question. I'm just going to assume you're going by wins gained because I think that would be the most common way of looking at this, and that's also what matters. Strength of schedule and power ratings are more so a tiebreaker for reaching the college football playoff or being viewed as a better team in terms of achievement and record, wins and losses, as long as the schedules don't have a massive disparity, like let's say Indiana and Ohio State last year. As long as they're somewhat close, maybe USC is a top 50 schedule and Michigan's is top 25. Like there's a noticeable gap, but it's not Indiana being outside the top 100 and Ohio State being inside the top 10 as they're about to play against each other. Then wins and losses are typically what a lot of people use as a comparison, whether rightfully or wrongly. And a team can be lower in power ratings and still better meet expectations than a team that's higher in power ratings, even if their expectations are an identical record. Maybe the team with a higher power rating loses more close games, and the team with the lower power rating wins more close games, but also plays in more close games with a weaker schedule, suggesting that they're a worse quality team. But they are doing a better job of being clutch and punching above their weight class than the team that is, better than them and definitely in terms of power ratings superior to them in terms of analytics. Maybe that's me rambling too much, but there's just so many ways you can attack this question. I wanted to get all of them out of the way. I have not given out my preseason Big Ten predictions yet. However, I will say that these staffs are pretty equal. They are good staffs, maybe great. I would say that USC's has the edge over Michigan. I still think that USC has some newer, younger coaches that are unproven that maybe weigh down their staff more than Michigan. Michigan, I don't think, has the same amount of new and young names. They have more staff continuity than USC does, which is surprising because USC has a lot of staff continuity. Michigan really just lost their OC. Kurt Campbell, fired him and then replaced him with Chip Lindsey. USC lost their strength and conditioning coach, lost their corners coach, lost their offensive line coach, and the de jure offensive coordinator, but Riley was the de facto OC. He calls the plays. USC is a slightly better staff in my mind, and I'll go more in depth with this when I release my predictions and also do deep dives on specific teams. But I think D'Anton Lynn is a better DC than Wink Martindale. And I think that Riley is a better play caller than Chip Lindsey and also a better head coach than Sherrone Moore is. I think a large part of the reason why Moore beat Riley last season is because Michigan's roster was legitimately that much more talented and physical than USC's was. USC in the game last year in their matchup was very mentally tough, and they were trying to be as physically tough as possible, and I think they were physically tough. But Michigan has been in their current identity. They were in that game for 4 years. 4 years. And they returned a lot of high-caliber NFL players. USC did not return a lot of high-caliber NFL players. In fact, they lost the same amount of production as Michigan did entering 2024, and Michigan lost a ton. And USC had to deal with the travel, the home field environment, and Michigan really being in year, I would say like 4 or not even that. You could say that they were in year 10 of things. If you want to argue that Sherrone Moore is just a continuation of the Harbaugh era, at least that's what the goal is, maybe, reaching the title again and winning with physical football with some adjustments. Riley changed everything entering 2024. I mean, parting with Grinch and that style of defense. This season, he kind of hit the nail on the head, pushed the nail, hit the final nail in the coffin with firing Benny Wiley, who has been with him forever at Oklahoma and USC as his strength and conditioning coach. He changed everything entering 2024. It was really year one for him in year one with USC in this new era. So Michigan was further ahead of USC. But USC clearly, whether it was power ratings or when you watched them, they had an upside to them and a completeness to them that Michigan did not, roster-wise. So looking at 2025, who will have the better bounce back year? I think that Michigan will have the better defense. I think that USC will have the better offense. Quarterback, USC is more proven there, but Underwood, make no mistake, is more talented than Maava. Running back, now I'm going through all the positions, and I'll just finish it out this way. Running back, I'd say depth USC, overall number 1 to be determined. A lot of potential there. O-line Michigan, but USC quietly has a good O-line even with all they lost. Could easily be better than Michigan's. Wide receivers, definitely USC by a mile. Michigan's unit's bad there. Tight end is Michigan. D-tackle and D-end are Michigan. Linebacker, Michigan has the depth, but Eric Gentry would be Michigan's best linebacker by a decent margin. Safety, USC, and then corner, I would say Michigan, and then special teams, Michigan. Michigan should, in terms of roster composition, should be better than USC, but USC's staff is better, so they'll probably manage the talent better. Michigan returns more production than USC, but it's not like they're returning 70 or 80%. USC's returning 40%. It's more Michigan's returning in the 60s. USC's returning in the high 40s, lower 50s. So taking all of those things into consideration, that USC will probably manage their talent better. They have more proven production at QB. Their staff is a little bit better. They host Michigan, and they have more to gain in terms of gained wins compared to the prior season than Michigan does because they had a worse record. I would say it's more likely that USC is the better bounce back season. And that's not me saying Michigan won't bounce back. I think Michigan will win more than 7 games this year. In fact, I will say that they will win more than 8 games this season. I'm talking about 9 wins or more is what Michigan will earn. But if USC simply earns 8 wins, well, they've matched Michigan's gained wins. And then if they have the head-to-head win over Michigan in that scenario, let's say, well, then they've beaten them head-to-head. That's the tiebreaker. They then have the better bounce-back year. If USC goes 9-3 and Michigan goes 9-3, USC is the better bounce-back year. So I think it's slightly more likely that USC is the better bounce-back year. I will say that I'm more confident that Michigan's going to be the better team than USC, than I am confident in USC having the better bounce-back year. But I'm confident in both statements. Michigan's going to be better than USC in a power rating sense and an overall sense, and also that USC will have the better bounce-back season. They have more to gain, and I think that their schedule is more workable in a sense, particularly because they host Michigan, and they host them in an environment that is going to be different from Michigan in a climate sense and is several time zones away. And USC also gets Michigan off of a bye. So that game should be a USC win, and that alone can push USC to having more gained wins, just 1 or 2 more than what Michigan does relative to the 2024 season.